as we consider our students who are at risk, who are having a harder time in transition, who are first generation, low income, just we consider that ocean of students that we want to support and we want to do really, really well. This idea that deep, powerful relationships are inescapable for that group of students, I think is such a great mindset. Welcome back. I've been saying all day, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's fall.
It's fall. It is a new year. I know your students are coming to campus, probably already there. I've been working with some of our schools who are already doing stoplight surveys for faculty, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. So thank you guys for joining us for our second, I said it was our second season, but I think it might be our third season.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's our third season.
Third season, first episode. Happy New Year. Welcome back. Good to see you.
I think it's number 52.
Okay, well, we'll have to double check that. But you guys, I missed you. I will just say that I had a reminder still on Tuesdays at 2:00 on my calendar. I didn't turn it off. So every Tuesday at 2:00, I just was channeling love and thoughtfulness and kindness to all of you who make us a regular part of your week. Thank you so much. We're excited to be back. I know a lot of you listen to us through whatever podcast medium you like. So thank you for doing that and making time to spend with us. You guys, please rate our podcast. I just learned this is a thing I'm supposed to be asking people to do. You tell me that you like it. And I've had, Matt, a weird experience 3 times this summer where I ran into somebody who knew me from the podcast, but I didn't know. So that was like my pseudo brush with fame. Like, oh, you're Rachel from the podcast. And I was like, yes. But apparently we should be asking people to rate our podcast so that other people, when they search for it, can see what a good job we're doing. Hopefully.
Welcome to Cap and Gown. So, Rachel, you've had a summer.
I have had a summer. I've had a really great summer. I got to travel quite a bit, so that was really nice. My sister lives in Norway, and so has 2 little boys that I haven't seen because of COVID. The last time I saw them, my youngest nephew was not quite young, but 1, and my oldest nephew was just 3. And so I haven't seen them that long. And then this time they were almost 4 and 5, anyway, birthdays. So I got to go and see them for almost a month. That was joyful.
Awesome.
My sister tricked me into a very long hike up to Pulpit Rock, which I'm not mad at because it was an amazing hike and it was beautiful. And I'm so glad I did it. She was like, it's hard. And then when I got home, she was like, it's hard, isn't it? And I was like, yes. Fortunately, she let my brother
Baited you.
Yeah. She sent my brother-in-law with me in case I couldn't make it. She's like, he would have carried you down. It would have been fine. So that was great travel. We had a really good time. Let's see what else happened this summer. So we have just been super busy adding a lot of new schools, getting everybody up and running. I was laughing, you guys, you'll appreciate this, about how starting now, all of the projects that we don't have time for on our campuses get added to the summer agenda, right? So it's like, we don't have time for that now, but this summer we're going to, and then we've just closed the last summer for all of us where it's like we had 7,000 things on the agenda. We only got 3,000. So they just all moved to the next summer. So lots of you are busy finishing up your new implementation tasks and your new plans and using risks and all of that kind of stuff that you have planned on this summer. So that's always really fun.
So Rachel, one thing that came out of your time in Norway is you.
Yeah, I brought this for you. It's a candy bar for those of you who are joining us on our podcast. It's a candy bar and it says something in Norwegian. What it says in Norwegian is quick lunch. And I brought it for Matt because I think it is genius marketing, because it's like the equivalent of a Kit Kat. But you know, if you're like, hey mom, I've been busy all day, can I just have a quick lunch? And she says yes, you get a candy bar. Genius, right?
All the kids are happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is like a big part of hiking, right?
Yes. So the rule is you hike up the thing, and at the top you have a quick lunch and a mandarin orange. And then you have hiked the Norwegian way. So grateful for my sister to be teaching me all the things about a quick lunch. Lillian's pulled the quick lunch on me a couple of times since we got home. Hey mom, can I have a quick lunch? Sure. You know, so
saying, hey, could I have a Kit Kat? It's a little different.
Yeah, totally different. You'd be like, not before dinner? No, but a quick lunch. All right. So it's fun. In other news, Matt, did you know that I got taken down from YouTube for bullying?
2 truths and a lie, right
Yeah.
there.
I got a video banned from YouTube because they said I was bullying. What's crazy town is it was our demo. So they're all fake people. First of all, just to be clear, I don't bully anyone, much less fake people. Like there was no bullying going on, just in case you were confused about that. But Trey went and appealed it, and they're like, no, it was personal information you were sharing.
Doxing personal information of our demo students.
Yeah. So I don't really know what to do about that.
I think, yeah.
Whatever. Okay. I think it's great. I'm going to go around telling everyone. I'm very grateful. So far, everyone I've told has been like, for real? I'm like, thank you. Not like, yeah, well, that's to be expected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, listen, Matt, do you have something else you want to say?
Well, I think you should introduce everyone to your new organization.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just say, side note, I know you guys are super busy and you are doing the work. So my agenda for us today, like I said, I've missed you. I'm so happy to see so many familiar names joining us. I want to give you an encouragement about what's happening currently on your campus, and also just spend some time with you and tell you some good stories about my summer and that sort of thing. So we don't have a super huge agenda today. We're just like slowly getting back into cap and gown. Okay. But I do want to tell you about, so this is what happens. I don't know if you guys have this experience. I go spend time with my sister, and there's like a lineup of 25 things that she then teaches me about, that then I come back to the office and I'm like, everybody should know about these things, right? So Dr. Mondragon, the chiropractor on YouTube, you should be watching her if you like to watch people get their backs cracked. It's really amazing. It's like my new favorite pastime. Who knew? It sounds weird.
You ever want to watch someone get their ear popped?
Yeah. Just watch one and you'll be like, oh, that's really awesome. We need to talk about the behavioral panelist, because that's another great YouTube thing that I've been watching. What did you ask me to talk about?
How to organize your life.
Oh, yes. Okay. The other one is Clutterbug. And you guys, here's the quiz of the podcast. Okay. If you're with us, you can chat it to me, your answer, but otherwise just think it through. She says you have 2 choices to make about how you organize. You are either a micro organizer, everything has its place and it's exactly where it needs to be, or a macro organizer, a big bucket of stuff and you put it all in there, but it's kind of the same, right? So her example is medicine. Like, do you have all of your painkillers together? And do you have all of your this together and all of your bandages together? Or do you have a bucket of medicine and then you have to go through and find it? And the question you have to ask yourself about that is, can you spend time putting things away, or can you spend time finding things? So I can't spend half a second putting a thing away. If I can't throw it to where it's supposed to go, I'm already bored, like I'm losing the battle, right? But in the bucket of medicine, I can spend some time like looking for the cold medicine or whatever. That doesn't bother me so much. Some people are like, I will spend eternity putting the thing away, searching through, finding exactly the right spot. But I'm super frustrated if I can't, in the dark with my eyes closed, which would be redundant, put my hand on it, right? Like it just has to be exactly where I notice. So you're micro or you're macro.
Okay.
And then you're either visible or hidden. So visible is like, I want to see all of my things. I want to be reminded of them. I like looking at the stuff that I have. It should be organized, but I like looking at it. And then hidden is like, I want a box so that when you look at my house, everything's like clean lines, hidden. You get the illusion that everything is super like organized and clean. But if you open up the drawer, you're like, oh, it's full of whatever, right? Okay, so micro, macro, hidden, visible. Those are your choices, and whatever your combination is. I'm a macro visible organizer, and I have reorganized my whole house since I got back from Norway. I just worked on my refrigerator this weekend. It's like changed my life. So helpful. Anyway, that's my rant about that. Matt, what did you just say? It's how you are macro hidden?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I think I like to put things in drawers.
Yeah, and not organize them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That would be macro hidden. That's great.
I was just looking over at your desk and I was agreeing with you.
Yeah. I like to see my things.
Yeah.
I can't remember I have them if I don't see them.
Okay. So any feedback? Anyone joining us live? Love to hear.
The woman is called Clutterbug, and seriously, I'm being funny about it, but it really has changed my life. I organized all my closets since I got back. I organized my refrigerator. I organized Lillian's room. Like, it's super helpful to understand what kind of a clutterbug you are. So you can Google that. That one's just for free, just because I want to be helpful to you.
That's
Okay.
great.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the State of the Union that we need to talk through. Have a couple of things. I told Matt, as I was getting ready for the State of the Union, I was like, all I have to do is just read through everything that's happened since May, since the last time we were together, and just give it to you in 15 minutes. That's all.
Digest.
Yeah. So I've picked out some of the things that I think are going to be most helpful. First of all, there's a new organization, which is called Third Way. Their website is thirdway.org. I really appreciate this because they are working to make more helpful college ranking. So the article that I read about this is all about how college ranking is so much about like, who are your peers impressed with you? Side note, some of these crazy colleges throw gigantic $200,000 dinners and invite all of their peers so that their peers will think more highly of the college and rank it better, right? That doesn't help our students. You guys aren't doing that, but crazy colleges are doing that. Also selectivity. So you have 150 people apply, but you only take 6 of them. That's another way you have a high ranking. And so the man who came up with this third way of ranking is saying those metrics are not helpful for our students whatsoever. What we should be doing is looking at how this college degree sets you up to be successful for your life, right? So he came up with 2 metrics. The first one is the price to earnings calculation, which is basically how much does your school cost? Divide that by the expected post-enrollment earnings minus what we would expect somebody with just a high school degree to get. And so that will give you the total number of years that it will cost you to recoup the money that you invested in your college degree. So that's the first piece. And then he's really interested in how that applies to low income students, because he's talking actually about this idea of upward upward mobility. Yeah. So he's then took that calculation and he applied it to lower income students and took into consideration the percentage of schools or the percentage of students at a school that had a Pell Grant. And so he's just gone through and said, this is what you need to know. What I really love about it is schools that provide the most economic mobility are Hispanic serving institutions in 3 states, California, Texas, and New York. Those schools, Hispanic serving institutions in those 3 states provide the most across the board change in economic mobility. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
Um, Historically Black colleges and universities also scored very high on that. So I think I actually have for you guys that the link to that report. It is just thirdway.org. So if you go there, you can see, like, you can dive into all of the metrics and all of that, but he does go through and rank all of the schools. I think that'll be really helpful for parents. Okay, another great article in Inside Higher Ed, which is about service with a smile. Matt, we were laughing about this because this is your joy and delight service, especially when it comes to higher education.
How I got into higher ed.
Yeah. So I have been hearing the things in this article for 15 years from you. What's really interesting about this article, it's called Service with a Smile, is that it, first of all, is like, hey, over the pandemic, we've had to holistically support our students. But we really don't like calling them customers. Everybody gets very unhappy when you call students customers, but all students think of themselves as customers. So we have a little bit of a rub there, right? Because it's like, we don't like that, but that's how they're thinking about it. Did you have something to say about that?
Well, I understand from a faculty standpoint, in the classroom, they're learning, they're students. But we've done so much. There's so many different aspects of being on a campus that is about service. And so I don't know, maybe when they're in my classroom, are they a customer? Probably not. They're probably more of a student. Outside of that classroom, there's a lot of experiences, and they are, just like you would, experiencing those and thinking about it like someone who's paying for it. So.
Yeah, for sure. So they said this is a little bit easier in offices where they're actually taking money and providing something. So you think about like billing or the bookstore or whatever, then obviously like that can be adjusted a little bit. But in general, it's a good question. They just went through, and I would encourage you guys to read this article, but it's like, hey, here's how you improve service. You need to be really intentional about spending time with your students. You have to set service goals, which for some offices is like an anathema. They can't even imagine that you would have a service goal or how we're going to measure it, right? We were laughing. We call it the ping pong ball, but this article talks about the campus shuffle, which is where you're like, hey, you should go here. And then you go there to solve the problem. The person that you go see is like, oh no, that's not me. You have to go see Judy over here. And then you go over there and Judy's like, no, that's not me. You got to go see Ed over there. He's the one who has to solve it, right?
One of our very first schools we did consulting for, we spent time talking to the students about their experience and frustrating services on campus. And as they described how they would be pinballed from one office to another, this is the school that we're like, hey, everyone sit in a room and tell everyone else what you do, because there have been so many changes. It wasn't that they were trying.
They literally, like, someone was like, hi, I'm Rachel and I do this. And everyone in the room was like, wait, you do what? I thought you blah, blah, blah. And then someone was like, no, I'm the one who blah, blah, right? So it's a good exercise to make sure that you're not sending students on the campus shuffle. That is not a good choice. And then the rest of this article is really about how do you provide training? How do you know? I love Braden always says about customer service, like, hey, imagine you were the customer. How would you like to be treated here? That's good customer service, right? And Matt, you and I say, like, pretend like I'm your mother and you had to solve this problem for your mother. How would you want to treat the people that you're trying to help, right?
Yes, when I'm very frustrated with someone who's not understanding, they're not showing any empathy, they're not responsive, I just say, is this how you would want your mother to be treated? And that usually gets them to think in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking it's time for us to do a revamp of all of your service quality measurements. I think that would be a good one for us to talk about this year. So,
yeah.
Okay, almost done. 2 more. So did you hear about the student Aaron Ogletree at Cleveland State sued Cleveland State, which is important. He didn't sue the vendor who created this thing. He sued Cleveland State because he had to agree to allow a camera to scan his bedroom before he could take a chemistry exam online in 2021. So first of all, he was given no advance notice, so he couldn't like clean up his room, or I don't know what he was worried about, but he did not like that idea. And he couldn't go on campus to take it. So it basically was like he had to agree to have this scan or fail the test because it was set up for him to do it. So he sued him, and the court's federal judge found on Monday that his Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable government search and seizure was violated by this camera scan necessity. So pretty interesting. You know, Matt, we have this thing with technology where somebody will be like, wouldn't it be awesome if we just tracked where students were at all time on a campus so that at any moment we would know like, oh, they're still in their room, they didn't go to class. And then we're like, that's a terrible idea. Just because the technology can doesn't mean it's a good idea, right?
Is that how you would treat your mother right now?
Right.
It is one of those things where we have had, because we're a technology company, and so other like CIOs, they want to talk technology and all the possibilities. And a lot of times it's like, that's neat. Like in theory, it's neat. But in reality, you could really be upsetting your students. And so maybe you shouldn't.
It's so crazy to me that somebody said the way we're going to make sure students don't cheat on a test is we're going to force them to let us see the entire room that they're in. And everyone around the table was like, that's a good idea. You know, somebody wasn't like, I don't think that's probably the way to solve that.
Well, I don't want to dive too deep into this, but we know when COVID hit and we sent all of our students home, and we had interns who then started working from their home in whatever room they could work from. And that's when you and I were like, hey, there's a lot of stuff we never would know and maybe shouldn't know about.
We were in a class and we were looking at the students who had they had to have their cameras on. And we were like, oh my gosh, we have just learned so much about these students because we can see their background and their house and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, for sure. And actually, Matt, I think we changed our tune on that because I think in the beginning we were like, hey, you need to see each other to connect, and right. And then after that experience, we're like, no, people are allowed to say, I don't want to be on camera for this thing. So pretty interesting. Okay. The last one I have for you is also about Zoom meetings. So this man did an experiment about how do we make Zoom less boring, basically. Okay. So he had 3 groups. The first group was a control group. They just had boring Zoom meetings. The second group, he taught a bunch of hand motions to them. And while they were in the Zoom meeting, they're supposed to use these hand motions to like contribute to the conversation. So I'm going to show you what those are. And then the last group was using emojis. So like thumbs up, like heart face, smiley face, whatever. The smiley face emoji group did not have the same benefits as the group that was using these hand motions. And the theory was that when you were using hand motions to engage in the meeting, it was like, oh, these are real people. They're really listening to me. They're tracking with me. There's a good reason for me to have my video on because, you know, we're actually having a conversation. So you are oftentimes subconsciously assessing whether or not someone is listening to you over video. And so this is a way to have that affirmation, like, yes, you are. Okay. So here are the things, here are his different things. So he was like, you have to do 2 thumbs up. You have to do all of the gestures with 2 hands so that people don't get confused. Like it can't be subtle. Right. Yeah. So it has to be. And he was like, also sometimes people join on the phone. And so you might see 1 thumb, but really they're just scrolling or texting. So 2 thumbs up is you're doing a great job. I like that. Raising your hand, obviously I want to speak. Putting your hand over your heart is I feel you, or I agree with you, or like, yes, that is resonating with me. We have 2 thumbs down. We have scratching the top of your head is I have a question, which I'm just going to tell you, I'm never doing. I would never do that in a Zoom meeting. It's hard for me to do it right now. Like I'm not doing that. That's too embarrassing. Okay. Raising your hand like yes. So it's like a palm
Like a
fold.
high
Like,
five.
yes, I've
It's
had
like a
that
high five.
too. Yeah, like absolutely. We got it. This one I like, I don't know about that. All right. So it's just like a wrist shake of flattened palms. This and X with your arms is like, I have a different opinion. I have more data. I want to challenge you on that, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
We have the handshake, like holding, like you're congratulating yourself, but
There you
that's like,
go.
you've done a good job. Hand to the ear is I can't hear you, which I think is genius. I'm going to start doing that all the time now. Instead of like, hey, you're on mute, just being like, hey, I can't hear you. But Matt, this is the one that I appreciate. And I just imagined a future where I'm allowed to use this hand signal just in my daily life as well as on Zoom calls, which is your fingers are up in the air and you're like circling them around. And this means like land the plane. The article says it's come to a conclusion, which is a nice way to say that. Like, can we
It's
like
time.
get on with it?
Two fingers.
Yeah,
It's good.
I'm pretty sure I do that all the time. But
You
I'm
do.
really curious. I'm really curious as a speaker, like how does that feel to have all that feedback all the time?
I mean, if so, while you're talking, someone's like this.
Down, thumbs down, like I don't really like what you're saying. One of the things that the
Yeah.
faculty member said is that it took them out of the role of having to sort of traffic, what do you call that? Like a traffic cop, where you're like, okay, you can speak now. Okay, Matt, do you have something to say? All right, looks like so-and-so. Does anyone disagree with this? So instead of it being that directing, then everybody can do a handoff where I'm saying something and you raise your hand. So then you go next and I'm like, that's dumb. And so then I can say, right. So I think that's interesting, but I think, man, you got to have a really strong ego to be teaching a class and having everybody like land the plane. I don't know what you're talking about. That's stupid. Thumbs down. Right.
You might be a little more, I don't know, thoughtful about your contribution to that meeting. If someone,
Hey, for sure, like don't use 1,000 words when one word will do. You know what I mean? We all have those
you
meetings.
guys know, like if we could go back and do the podcast, the ones that I've joined Rachel in the past, you can see it in her eyes where she's like, okay, land the plane. And now you can just roll your
That's
fingers.
not true. Okay. Well, the good thing is that people who don't join us live or watch us on YouTube wouldn't have any idea. They just be like,
Yeah.
I don't know. All of a sudden her guest started like honing in on it and she must have done the circle movement.
So emojis don't work as well, and no feedback or exchange is not helpful.
Same. Yeah.
But the outcome of using hand gestures is a more engaged
Right.
discussion.
And the goal is
Happier.
to decrease fatigue. So instead of just
Yeah.
sitting here like, you're engaged, you actually are in a more of a conversation with your team, like you would be in a room where someone's like, yeah, it's a good
Do
point. Or,
this.
I don't know, what's that? Oh, you're yawning.
Yeah.
I think just 2 thumbs down is fine. Like, I don't
Cool.
like what you're saying. Anyway, that is the State of the Union. So there you go. I have to point out
So
that
much. You spent how do you take May through August and boil it down into
like that.
the big state of the union is, hey, happy new year. It started. I love this time of year. I love the season. I love the energy that comes from the new students, but I love that familiarity of your older students coming back, and it's been a while and they have things they want to tell you.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
really
That
fun.
is fun. So I want to just remind you of some of our high level points that we have been talking about all of last year. Matt and I were just saying, like, this is the time. All last year when we're talking about you're going to have new students and we've got to have threshold moments and we have to have collisions and we have to blah, like all of that stuff. I know it's right now. And I know you don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts and just hang out with us. So I want to remind you of the things that you are doing right now. I know you're already doing them on your campuses. remind you of the language, and then send you on your way to continue doing all of your good work. Matt, I was thinking about this book that my good friend, Dr. Doretta Nelson, told me about from Credo, Relationship Rich Education, which I love. It's How Human Connections Drive Success in College. You're going to hear a lot about this one because I'm like very slowly absorbing it. It's a really good one. But I just read this. So students typically start building their mentoring relationships early in their undergraduate careers. 60% of students reported meeting their most influential faculty or staff member in college during their first year. And 79% of students formed their most significant peer relationship during that year. So that's why when we're saying this is the work, you have 2 semesters stretching in front of you, of course, but this time of transition and threshold moments and new connections is just such a powerful place to show up for your students. So we haven't said, Matt, because I don't know if I can, I mean, Aiden is not my son, but living vicariously through you taking your son to college is just about all I can handle. And so you were like, Rachel, you can't talk about it if you're going to cry. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. So that is a really good example though, that I want you to talk about as you and Melissa are dropping Aiden off at college, and just all of the experiences of this is going to be his place. And here's what I would want people at this institution to be doing for my students. So we'll weave that into our conversation today. And I will try to not cry and set off
Don't make me cry.
set off a chain reaction. Okay, I love this language. You guys know it. In Relationship Rich Education, it says meaningful, deep, powerful human relationships essential for undergraduate education should be inescapable for every student, not optional, which I love, because as we consider our students who are at risk, who are having a harder time in transition, who are first generation, low income, just we consider that ocean of students that we want to support and we want to do really, really well. This idea that deep, powerful relationships are inescapable for that group of students, I think is such a great mindset, right?
Oh yeah.
And some students are going to make it real hard for you, right? You've heard me talk about before, like, good luck trying to draw me out of my shell when I was a student, because I was sending out the vibes of like, I don't want anyone to talk to me. But if I had this experience of like, hey, Rachel, people are going to be close to you, that is inescapable. Your faculty are going to see you. They're going to want to know what's going on with you. They're going to want to talk to you. That is not a thing that you can get out of. So you might as well just like get into it, right? I love that language.
Especially for our schools, right? Like, I understand going to a large school to just blend in, like you really don't want that. But for the schools we serve, where the majority of colleges and universities in the United States are smaller, and it's about relationship. And so the idea that you could slip through the cracks and maybe even want to slip through the cracks for the school to be
inescapable though. Yeah.
Inescapable.
I love that. Also remember that we have been talking about threshold moments, which, hey, this is threshold moments time to shine. Like this is when it's happening. So, this idea of there is an acknowledgement of new relationships. There's a marking of this moment. There's a way to say we are in this together now. Like we've all come from all of our different homes, and now we are living in the same rest hall. We are in the same classes together. We are eating in the same cafeteria, right? It's interesting, Matt. I was thinking about after you and Melissa dropped Aiden off, and when you come over and you're like, there's all of these places where Aiden doesn't know enough to know yet. Oh, shoot. Hold on.
He belongs. This is the right place for him.
And this is the moment where that is subtly communicated to him, right? where it's like, you will look back in 20 years and be like, I remember when I met that person in my dorm. I remember when I met that person walking down the hall or whatever. He just doesn't know yet how special those things are because they haven't come to be. Shoot.
It's pretty powerful to think about. So as a parent, you have that perspective for your child. And so one night I went for a walk around his school, and I just thought about that. And I thought about the students who are on that campus who are starting this journey. They're all starting it together. And Aiden's going to bump into and develop friendships, and life-changing relationships will be formed here. And it's just a really neat realization. And then I started thinking about the students we really worry about, care about, the ones we're here to help, to find and connect. And I started thinking about, there are people on this campus for them too. And so, man, for everything that you're talking about, how can we be intentional to connect with those students? It's transition's hard. It's hard thinking about, that transition from my house to his college experience. But then I get excited because he has found a place where he belongs, and he's already starting to figure that out.
Yeah. So I think just being able to have very clear attention to your threshold moments. There are so many new beginnings as we're starting the fall semester, 1 weekend, 2 weekends. Some of you I know are already have gone on for a month, but there's so many little places where you have these new beginnings. This book also talks about the relentless welcome, which I love, which is just a posture with your students that you are welcoming them. And again, they can't get out of it. I think RAs often are really good at this. Admissions counselors are really good at this. If you have peer leaders in your U100 classes, often they are really good at this. The idea that we are taking 5 minutes this time of year, where every time we come in contact with a student, we say, hey, how's it going? But for real, not like a how you doing, but like a for real, how's it going? And I said to you this idea of relentless welcome, where if somebody had said to me in those first weeks, hey, Rachel, how's it going? I think I would have told them the truth, because I wouldn't have yet gone to the place of like, something's wrong with me. It's working for everyone else. Everybody else likes it. It's going wonderfully for them. I was still in a place where I felt like it was probably okay for it to be a little bit hard. And so I think there's these couple of weeks, month in the beginning where students will tell you the truth. If you will see them and say, how are you? How is it going for you? Right? Do you have something?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm just thinking about all the people on your campus right now. So I love it. So the idea of having this relentless welcome, the idea of just think about people who are naturally gifted at this.
Yeah.
To just go and find, to have those conversations, put that into your to-do for this week.
Yeah. You and I were saying it's the difference between like a student lurking, where they're uncertain and they don't know if they can come in your office or like approach you or whatever. The difference between someone who's like, hey, come in and tell me how it's going, right? Versus you were saying you've had an experience where you were like super excited to meet a faculty member. You were kind of waiting for them to finish and they're like, what do you need? And you're like, nothing from you, sir. Thanks. I'm good.
Guess I don't need anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So I love that concept of relentless welcome. It's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, remember we're also talking about collisions, and this is where you have these serendipitous personal encounters, but the only way that happens is you are out and about. And so if we think about in the first week, admissions counselors just walking the campus, just talking to people and being like, how's it going? I'm so glad to see you're here, right? That's a great resource. Matt, that Savannah has been doing a lot of work for Impact Cohort, thinking through how do we apply belonging cues and collisions and threshold stuff to what's happening for this group of students that we've identified higher at risk. And so she, like, the goal for those students and anyone who's managing them is that they have 20 collisions this month. And the only way that happens is you have to be out on campus, not sitting in your office, but walking and eating and being in the places where students are, which I think is super powerful. So I think that's a great thing to put in there. And then you and I were talking about this idea of a relationship-rich environment. This book really argues that one mentor versus a mentoring constellation, right? So and which I love, because, we have circle of care. So we're not like one person is in charge of this. We're like, what's the constellation around this group of students for them to be managed? Go ahead.
No, keep going.
Okay. Well, it was really exciting to me to think about how technology can make that more transparent, because one of the hardships with our at-risk students is not knowing that they're not connected. Right? So how do we know who is in this mentorship constellation? Sorry, you look like you want to say something to me. We need to use hand signals.
I don't know. I forgot what the hand signal was.
Yeah, I forgot.
What's the hand signal for? I have something I want to say.
Raise your hand.
Just raise your hand. Just raise your hand. Hey, well, like you were talking about with Kendra, who was, if you think about a student who's first generation and navigating, but resourceful, really, really a student who's got a lot of grit and resilience. Like I don't know, it feels very overwhelming to me to be that point of contact, the sole person to guide them through all the things. I love Kendra. I will do it. I'll try my best, but she's a nursing major, so that doesn't really fit, right? Yeah. Like there are things that I will really struggle. And so it is the power of having a circle of care around a student so just being intentional about helping them collect other people. Right?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking too about this idea of like orchestrated collisions. So with your RAs, you could absolutely have orchestrated collisions, right? And so many of our schools are using our RA question guide that's like, here's the 7 things you should be like assessing with all of your residents. And so go in, capture that, make sure that you're having collisions in your hall that are, yes, surprising, but also not, because you're out and you guys are living in the same place. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can build that in. And I know you guys are doing a great job of that. I think, like you said, Matt, for so many of the schools that we serve, like that's what you do. Like we are all about collisions. We are not sitting in our office just kind of hanging out.
I really hope for our schools that as this week starts, next week, in this is the time that RAs are going and paying attention to who's eating on campus, that admissions counselors are kind of in the student center, and connecting students, especially those who are walking in by themselves. Yeah. So there's so many opportunities to do this.
And you can spot them. Now is the time to be able to spot them really easily. Yeah. We've talked before about being a connector. So being able to say like, hey, you should know so-and-so because this is right, because you have this thing in common. And I was thinking about, how for introverts, what do we do? Because I don't want to be connected to people, but listen, it's inescapable. So here's how we're going to fix it. Right. And I was thinking so often for introverts, I want an object in front of me, not a person. And someone can stand next to me and we can talk about the object or the thing or the lecture or the movie or the whatever, but I don't want to be across from a person. The what?
Football game.
The football game, right. The video game. I can be shoulder to shoulder and we can have this thing that we can talk about. And that's how we draw our introverts in. What is the currency that is going to compel them to be with people? And then what is the thing that they're going to be able to talk about without having to small talk amongst each other, I think is really important. I know so many of you guys are doing a really great job of that. So mentoring constellations, honestly, Matt, I love constellation as a circle of care language. Like if you just think about that, like this is the constellation of people who are around. We say mini care team, we say circle of care. I love that idea of constellation for our students. Okay, and then the last one, you guys know, sense of belonging. So related to and consequence of mattering, of sensing that you are respected and cared about, and that your presence and your contributions make a positive difference to your community. So that's Terrell Strayhorn's definition. But remember, we have been working for the last year on those belonging cues. So how you are investing in the exchange, which I think is inherent in a relentless welcome, that is energy that you were pouring into this person. It's not sitting and waiting for them to come and ask. It is inescapable. We are going to be in a relationship. You are going to be connected to me. Here's the energy that I'm pouring out in this relentless welcome. Also, individualization. So who are you and what do you need? You are from Seattle. This person is from Seattle. There's not a blanket that I'm going to say, everybody wants to go hang out and do this thing. I see you. And here's a way that I think that you can be pulled into our community, right? And then the last thing is future oriented. This is the part that's so amazing about students moving into a res hall, is not just the threshold moment where that's happening, but the future orientation of that, to be like, we are going to be in this room together for the next year. And then we have a continued relationship, just like when you drop Aiden off and you see a bunch of people that you knew however long ago, right?
Move-in day was pretty amazing. I mean, for me, to go back and think about that experience as a student during move-in day, but also as I was walking down, Melissa and I are walking down the hall where Aiden's moving in, and I'm watching other parents help their son move in.
Yeah.
And just to see how that's going.
Yeah.
So that's very present. But then there's this transition that happens where mom and dad leave, and these are their people for that year, right?
And you know, Matt, it's what we always say about, I love words so much. And the idea to me of, you know, it's like a better version of the old school anecdote about look to your left and look to your right. Half of you won't be here. And that, right? Like the better version is freshman gatherings where you say, look to your right and look to your left. These are your people. This is where you belong. And in 4 years, you're going to look to your left and look to your right, and you're going to be in graduation. And you will have built this whole experience, shared experience with these people. These are your people who are going to go through this thing with you, right? And it is, I mean, it's both a threshold moment and this make sure that we're talking about our future orientation, how we're going to stick together and be one community. So I really love that. Okay. So you guys, I know you're in the work. I was just looking, Tammy has chatted us a great podcast on, it's called The Lord of the Rankings, related to our ranking. Yeah, we need to go check that one out. That looks awesome. So thanks for that, Tammy. Your action items for today, you guys. I know you're doing a great job. Remember, first of all, what are the things that if your freshmen are not doing them, we're already worried about them? They didn't come to orientation. They didn't check in during their welcome week. They didn't do freshman volleys, like whatever those things are, this is the time to be identifying those students based on they are not doing things that we would expect them to do in order to be successful. Also remember, so this is from our impact cohort instructions for September. I love this. It says, this month's goal is 20 collision hours. A collision hour is an hour spent in a place where it is possible to organically run into students. Suggested collision hour locations are dining halls, coffee shops, football games, library, computer lab, student bookstore. Be on the lookout for students you recognize. Look approachable. If you see a student you're familiar with, tell them hello, ask them how they're doing. The goal is to make students feel like they belong on campus. So we have so many examples of people that we work with who in their own college time felt like a fish out of water until somebody said, hey, Holly, how's it going? And then they were like, oh, thanks for seeing me, right? I guess I belong here. So I would say focus on those collision hours and connections of like, hey, I know John and I know Sarah. Do you guys know each other? Here, let me introduce you, right? That will be really impactful.
So 20 hours is totally manageable. It's 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
Each week this month or for the next 4 weeks. And so just pick that hour, get your team to kind of cross campus at different times. It's going to be really meaningful for your students that you're out and engaging with them.
And I want to say, just to close, we are reflecting all the time on our experiences. We're hearing from people about their experiences. They're telling us about students. And I was just struck the other day with, sometimes we do have those moments where somebody says your name, or you see some student sees you from across the room and is like, that is a person who's going to be in my mentoring constellation. We do have these moments that are marked in our brain as like a sign to us that we belong, and this is a great place, right? But we also have these moments. I was saying to you, I have worked in higher education for 20 years. I talk about being an at-risk student all the time. You guys have heard me tell the story of when my mom called the vice president of the school, who also was the mayor, and was like, Rachel is really depressed and she's not doing well. And I came in and I was like, I'm doing fine. How's it your business, right? And yet yesterday, as I was reflecting on that, I was like, you know what, Matt, though? He really did have me over to his house. He and his wife had me and my roommate over to his house several times. His wife, who had gone to ACU, gave me the mayor's car and said, Rachel, you have to go to a football game. Take the mayor. We called it the Mayormobile. Take the Mayormobile and go to the football game, and you'll meet people and it will be fun. It's probably the only football game I ever went to in my entire college time. But that was a slow building of a foundation. That was not a moment that I'm like, look at right here is when I decided that I belonged. It was these little signals to me of like, hey, there are people here who see you and care about you and are going to extend hospitality and kindness and this relentless welcome, whether you like it or not. Right?
And you just realized this.
I literally did. Yesterday, I was like, but wait a second, there's more to that story, because although I was super abrasive with him, he did relentlessly welcome me. He did say, it is inescapable, Rachel. You are going to be connected to our family and you are going to be seen, and we are going to be part of your constellation. And so I love that for you guys as practitioners, because it is such an important piece of not every way that you are pouring into your students and creating this foundation is a shining moment that then they pinpoint for the rest of their life. It is these subtle things of saying, how are you? I see you. Be connected here. I will be committed to relentlessly welcoming you to our community and making sure that you know that you're important to us. So I love that.
So powerful.
And you guys are getting to do that right now. So I encourage you in your work, get out of your office, go spend time with students, be looking for those students who need some extra hello or support or connection, and just make it inescapable for them to not be able to be connected on your campus. So thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next week.